Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Ajay Dhingra. I am a member of the Council of Membership, Connecticut State Dental Association. We are here again with another fabulous evening with a special guest. If it was him, he introduces his guest. I will introduce the same way. In his words, it is a huge honor for me today to have and introduce the dental media mogul, an icon of modern dentistry, Dr. Howard Farran, DDS MBA, to address new dentists in New England area. Dr. Farran is founder and chief executive officer, publisher of Farran Media LLC, which covers well-known Dental Town, Hygiene Town, Ortho Town magazines. Dr. Farran has practiced dentistry in the Phoenix metro area for more than 30 years and has lectured internationally on the business of dentistry since 1990. Actually, in August, he will complete 30 years of lecturing. In 2017, Incisal Edge magazine ranked him among the 32 most influential people in dentistry. Incredible. He graduated in 1987 from Kansas City, Kansas. He did not stop. Name it and you have it. Orthodontics, cosmetic dentistry, occlusion and TMDs, dental implants. He is diplomate in the International Congress of Oral Implantology, masterships in Academy of General Dentistry, masters in business administration. In 1999, Dr. Farran released the timeless Your 30-Day Dental MBA series, which is available on YouTube and iTunes. Since then, he has released massive amounts of distinguished content, including his monthly Howard Speaks column in Dental Town magazine, the 11-part online series course, The Virtues of Profitable Dentistry. His other noteworthy contributions are The Business of Dentistry, The Consumerist's Roadmap, and numerous articles in great dental journals. Lastly, what is the best? His world-renowned podcast, Dentistry Uncensored with Howard Farran. It has released more than 1,000 episodes and has been downloaded more than 5 million times. Dentistry Uncensored guests include dental professionals from around the world, including top-tier specialists, dentists fresh out of school, CEOs of the world's largest dental companies, and experts in marketing, finance, practice management, and more. Dr. Farran, welcome to Connecticut. It is a pleasure to have you tonight.
Oh, it's an honor to be here, and I still can remember Sister Mary Aloysia in grammar school. The first time I misspelled Connecticut, she said, "Come on, Howard, it's just connect, I cut," and I never forgot that my whole life. So I'm speaking to you tonight, and I can even spell the name. I can't spell Albuquerque, but I can spell connect, I cut. Thank you so much, AJ, for having me on your program. It's a huge honor. As an older man who's going to be 58 next month. And I've been practicing dentistry 32 years. I just came from my dental office. I'm worried about the kids in school, and I know you are too. And when you told me to come on tonight and talk to the kids, it's like I'm ready. I could talk to them all night because that's so important.
Thank you. So, Dr. Farran, this for you are addressing new dentists, and we want to talk about COVID-19 and how its effects and implications going to be. COVID-19 is considered as black swan, according to one of the newspapers. No one knows what course it is going to take, how long it will last, its implications we may have, short term, long term. It's so unpredictable. Some of the dentists will see its effects for a long time. Most damages are expected to recently open practices. Owners could be new dentists who are under tremendous school loans, practice loans, overheads. What is your advice to those new dentists in new practices?
That's the billion-dollar question in an industry that's, it was $117 billion last year just in the United States. It was $500 billion for the planet. The planet's got 8 billion people. There's about 2 million dentists. And it takes a humble person to sit there and say that you can't predict the future. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1980, went to Creighton University in Omaha. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, came and lectured our business class. And back then, nobody knew who he was. And my gosh, he would tell you that anybody who can tell you where the market is going to be tomorrow, the next day, a week from now is delusional. I mean, no one has a pandemic playbook because you would have to know the future. We don't have evidence of the past, but I assure you this is going to be the most brutal thing that happened to any dentist who lived through the pandemic. I mean, there's nothing else you could compare it to. This is beyond brutal. So to put this in perspective, I'm an old dog. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1980. That was the worst economy I had ever seen. Interest rates were 21%. You can't even get that high on a credit card. Unemployment and inflation were both double digit. The Federal Reserve, Paul Volcker, he had to be under armed guard. When I was in high school, I knew three people whose dad lost the family farm because they had borrowed money on it to buy some big expensive tractor and went in the barn and took their own life. I mean, that was as bad as I could ever imagine. And it was really good because it made you realize that it can always be that bad. I always thought when I was a little kid, the smartest, richest people were the ones who lived through the Great Depression. They just would not spend money. They wouldn't go out to eat at a steakhouse when they could go to Kroger and buy a $3 steak and go home and cook it themselves. I also noticed other things, those Depression people, they wouldn't wear blue jeans because blue jeans were for blue collar workers. That name comes from blue jeans. And when he could afford to buy his first pair of plaid pants, he thought that was the bomb. So here it was a zillion years later, and it's that dorky guy wearing plaid pants. And then I got out of school I graduated May 11, 87. And of course, October was Black Monday, where the market fell a quarter in one day. So I got out of high school, it was a collapse. I walked out of dental school, it was a collapse. And then I watched the 94 to 2000 internet buildup of internet stocks, which reminds me so much of today, these overvalued stocks. Remember, the most important thing Warren Buffett ever taught any of us was the Buffett index. That was when you go into a country and you take all the publicly traded values of the stock, it should be significantly less than the entire GDP. So usually historically it's about 70% of the GDP, and the Buffett index was clear at 125% a year before the pandemic hit. You got to remember, he wasn't buying anything. He was sitting on cash because it was all overvalued. So then the pandemic breaks out. The World Health Organization declares it, March 11th. And then on St. Patrick's Day, it was hard for me. I'm 100% Irish. I had to close down my office for the first time on St. Patrick's Day. And then we reopened it on Cinco de Mayo. So I shut it down with a bottle of Jameson and opened it up with a margarita. And but the government saw that initial stock market collapse, and they fired off every cannon they had. They usually add about $1 trillion of debt a year, and they fired off $4 trillion of debt in a day. And so you see that money, and a lot of it ended up in the stock market, and the bubble continues, and all that kind of stuff. But this virus, humans, they all live in the Eastern Hemisphere, not in the America. It's like 85% live in the Eastern Hemisphere. And the same goes for the Northern Hemisphere. Another 88% live in the Northern Hemisphere. So almost no one lives in the Americas. And almost all the people live in the Northern Hemisphere between the 20th and 80th parallel. And we've known the coronavirus dies out in the summer and it comes back in the fall. And all the epidemiologists that I know from ASU, because that's where I got my MBA, they say, yeah, this thing's going to come back in the fall and just punch you in the gut hard. So I want to hold no punches back, that this is really, really, really bad. And we're probably 4 months into a 24-month pandemic. The good news is probably Christmas, New Year's will be as bad as it gets. And then 2021, it'll just fade away. So your question is, you got kids in dental school right now. What would I do? And I hold no punches, hold no bars, hold. I'm going to say stuff that's going to offend everyone, probably even you, AJ. But with your introduction, even having my right accent, voice, everything, you probably know what to expect. But I don't pull any punches, because in where I come from, it's a sign of love and affection if I tell you exactly what I think. And if I start trying to pretend what you want me to say and start saying things that you want me to say, you're not going to trust me. I'm not going to be your friend. So I'm not here to become your friend. I'm here to tell you as a friend what I think's going down. And this is really, really bad. So let's back up. First of all, if you're still in school, I've always said there's two types of dentists in the world. There's the blood and guts oral surgeon, and there's the white and fluffy bleaching, bonding veneers. We'll just look at the facts. I mean, the most successful bread and butter dental offices are still just people getting you out of pain when you have a toothache. They can pull the tooth, they can do the oral surgery, they can do the molar root canal, and yeah, they do basic filling, basic crown and bridge, cleanings, exams, and x-rays. But everyone I know that has $1 million practice, it's not because they have CERAC or CAD-CAM or lasers or any of this fancy stuff. They're basic bread and butter dentist. And the blood and guts people make all the most money. Like oral and maxillofacial surgeons, they average $448,000 a year. If you can get into an oral surgery program, you'd be insane not to go. Periodontists make $330,000. Endodontists make $307,000. Pediatric dentists make $304,000 a year. And that's where you leave blood and guts and go into ortho. Now you drop down to $289,000, prosthodontics $219,000. And you see it when they do their first root canal, because when you do your first root canal, there's basically two types of dentists. One is like me, an apical barbarian that wants to get all the way to the apex and blow a puff of sealer out the end. And those guys are your surgeons, can pull a wisdom tooth, and will do any endo. And then you start seeing the guys who want to stop like a 0.5 millimeter from the apex, and they're pulp lovers, and they're all little finesse, and they want to go into bleaching, bonding, veneers, and composites. And all the money is in blood and guts. So if you can go get into a blood and guts specialty program to pull teeth, to do all that stuff, that's where the big money is. But I also want to tell you that it's time, if you're graduating $400,000 in debt, and by the way, that's the real number. A lot of people are pushing out numbers that the average dental school graduate's $287,000 in debt, and they're intentionally deceiving you by looking at their own data, knowing that 20% of those dental students, daddy and mommy paid for everything and they don't have any debt. So you can't factor in a big zero with all the numbers. So if mom and dad weren't paying for your school, it's costing you $100,000 in debt. So they're coming out $400,000 in debt. Now here's where I'm going to start getting offensive. When I was little, the most famous endodontist in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Ben Johnson, who started Tulsa Dental Products, which is now sold to Dentsply, Tulsa Dental, John McSpadden out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, the greatest endodontist in the world, all they did was endo. They didn't go to endo school. So, you don't have the money to go to pediatric dentistry, or let's say you didn't get accepted to a pediatric dental school. I can tell you that America is a big country and half of them live rural. And I have watched for 30 years where some kid will walk into a small town and there's, it's 8,000 people. So there's usually a dentist for every 1,000 in the small town, because the draw is whatever the population is from the rural. So a town of 10,000 will also draw an additional 10,000 people that will drive an hour into town. So it looks like a dentist for every 1,000, but it's still the national average, about a dentist for every 2,000. Now the globe is a dentist for every 6,000, but they'll go to that small town and they'll find out that I love pediatric dentist, and there's 8 old men that are as old as Howard, and none of them like kids, and I don't have the money to go to pedo school, and I I'm not going to do that. I didn't get accepted. And they just go around to the 8 dentists and say, hey, I'll be a pediatric dentist. Practice limited to pediatrics. You send me your kids. I'm not going to do mom and dad. I'm just going to do that. I've seen it done with endo. I've seen it done with endo the most. In fact, when we just did a survey the other day on what specialty do you refer out the most, I was saddened that half the dentists refer out all their molar endo. I mean, could you imagine, AJ, if you broke your leg, your family rushes you to the hospital and you walk in with a broken leg and they go, oh, I'm sorry, AJ, we don't do legs. We just do arms and ears. No, one of the 10 specialties is public health dentists. And everyone wants to talk about oral surgeons, endodontists, periodontists. What about public health? You're a doctor. You have a dental facility. Someone comes in with a toothache and you fold. I mean, that's not being very doctorish. So I would get in a mindset that people pay the most for acute crisis. I couldn't sleep last night. I got a toothache. They're ready to pay you $1,000 for a root canal, $2,500 a root canal, build up and crown, whatever you have. And pediatric dentists, I mean, it's sad when somebody takes their kid to a small town dentist and he says, I don't do kids, but if you drive 2 hours into Houston, there's a pediatric dentist there, but the first appointment is just an exam, then you'll have to go. No, I mean, my gosh. So I have seen so many times when somebody just passed on dental school, on specialty school, and just went into an area like they always did and say practice limited to endo. I would do that. If you want to be an endodontist and can't get into endo school, just find a town where people will trust you. That just means they hate endo and they're going to give you all their endo work. And by the way, business, you always hold up your hand. When you have a new idea, it should be faster. It should be easier. It should be higher in quality, lower in cost, smaller, more succinct. And that's not what education's done. Education, I mean, when they started the endo program back in the 80s, it was 1 year. And then they turned it into 2 year. Well, now they've turned it into 3 year. Well, that's not going faster, easier, higher. That's going the wrong way, and it's costing you $100,000 a year. So if I was graduating, the first thing I would do is I would get real-world experience. I would pass up a residency for an associateship job. A lot of people go into these associate jobs with a bad attitude. They're like, well, I don't want to go work for some DSO. And I'm like, dude, isn't your mom a dentist? Yeah. Doesn't she have a bunch of practice management problems? Hasn't she brought in consultants like Sally McKinsey and all these people to come in and help her? Okay, so you're going to go work for a DSO. Say you work for Heartland. I mean, Rick Workman's a dentist that owns 1,000 dental offices. Are you telling me you can't go get a job at Heartland and learn something about the business of dentistry from a dentist who owns 1,000 dental offices? I mean, 1% of all the dentists in America work for Rick Workman. And you can't learn something from that. So I would go get a job, and when they go get a job, they always and feel free to interrupt me anytime, AJ. I know I'm just ranting. I could rant for 40 days.
Thank you.
But they'll go get a job, and then they'll get on Dental Town and they'll say, well, I don't know which job I should take. One job will pay me 25% of production but pay my lab bill, and the other job will pay me 30%, but I have to pay half my lab bill. Which one should I take? And I'm like, dude, that would be, if somebody could answer that then everybody would be married off of a dating site. You would just get onto Tinder or Match and you put in your profile and they say, well, here's your perfect wife. That's not how the world works. What are you looking for? Like, if you wanted to learn more about implants, well, I would find a mentor implant guy that you could work for. If you really have problems with molar endo, you should be looking for a job with someone who would rather do molar endo than play golf. So there's so much more, especially when you're young. I mean, and the other thing is, look in the back door. I mean, when you're going into a dental office, you notice one dental office, nobody has worked there for more than 2 years, and the guy's 60 years old. And then you go to the other office, and half the people have worked there 10 to 20 years. You're in the people business. No one knows what an MOD filling is. They just know if they like you, if they trust you, and if they're going to lean back and let you touch them and give them a shot and do surgery in their mouth. You work in an operatory, it's a game of people. And if you can't keep your staff, you're not going to keep your patients. And now you're an associate in this office where no one's lasted a year or two. And it's the same thing with DSOs. I do know these DSOs. I know so many of them. And take the big ones that own 500 to 1,000 office, like Aspen Dental with Bob Fontana out of New York, or Stephen Thorne's Pacific Dental, or Rick Work, any of these things. Some local areas will have an office manager that's toxic and turning people, burning and churning. Well, you can see that. And then that same company in the next state over has got some of the best people that you've ever seen. So it's always a local issue. And I would get a job on that. And by the way, all of that was explained. You talked about my 30-day dental MBA. I want to tell you about my 30-day dental MBA is that I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's all free on YouTube. It's free on iTunes. I have Dentistry Uncensored podcasts, but I have a separate podcast of my 31-hour tapes because I bought my first laptop when I went to MBA school at ASU, and it was 2 classes a trimester, 3 trimesters a year, 2 years, and I just took notes of everything in that MBA that applied. And then when I got done, it was about a 30-hour rant, and Tony Robbins had just came out with his 30-day personal power, so I call mine the 30-day dental MBA. And it has been viewed tens of thousands of times, and it's like algebra. I mean, nothing's going to change in algebra, geometry. Nothing's going to change with people, time, and money management. And every kid who listens to that 30 hours during the pandemic has said it was just priceless. And it is priceless because it's free. It's free on YouTube. It's free on iTunes. It's free on Dental Town, all that kind of stuff like that. But so what I would do is during a pandemic, cash is king. So going and borrowing more money, getting in more debt, paying for more stuff, it doesn't make sense for me. I think it's time to get a job in the real world. And if anybody will hire you, get that job. And if you have options, find the job where you have more of a mentorship issue, where you're working for somebody who's going to be able to teach you something and you're going to learn something. And by the way, if you're that older doc, dude, you cause so much of the turnover because you want to go sit back in your office and drink coffee all day and just do that one big case. Dude, that's not fair. You should be given, and I was the opposite. I'd give them all the big case. I'm like, I'll just do hygiene checks. I'll do whatever you want. And then when they, spend 30 minutes trying to get out a tooth and they can't get it out in the end, then you walk in there and show them that, looks like Stevie Wonder's trying to pull this tooth. I can't see anything. Your flap's not big enough. Get a bigger flap. A big flap heals the same time as a short little flap. Mentor them. And then they're gonna be glad that they worked for you. At this point, I don't even know what question you asked, so I'll just go to the next question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you. It was good insight. But my question is related to jobs, since you brought up the job part. When this COVID-19 is going on and practices are trying to get back to normal and struggling to get their employees back and everything, do you see a decline in jobs for recent graduates? I mean, we are advising them for jobs, but there may be less jobs. I'm not sure. Your experience, please?
Yes. So it's back to the human psychology. When you look at the retirement of dentists, it's obvious that by about 60 years old, the dentist has raised their children, the children have gone to college, everybody's out on their own, and they can retire whenever they want, starting at 60, 65, no problem. Now, after the first divorce, you're going to back up your retirement date a year. A decade. And by the second divorce, you're probably going to die at the chair. So during this pandemic, a lot of older dentists that stayed with their first spouse and just kind of looked at the situation, and after 20 Zoom seminars, they just said to themselves, you know what, I'm not up for this. So all the DSO people I know, their direct calls of people saying, buy me, by older dentists have skyrocketed. Most of my dentist friends, like I was talking to one this morning, in Albuquerque, he says he already knows of 7 that closed down. During the 2008 Lehman's Day crush, about 82 dental offices in Phoenix went bankrupt. So yeah, you're seeing less supply. So when these older dentists sell, or they shut down, or they say, take this job and shove it, I'm out of here, there is less supply. But I want to start talking about my something you really got to think of. Something that's really doesn't work is when someone says the United States of America. I mean, we don't talk about Europe that way. In fact, Europe yesterday, I was telling you before the show, so the European Union has 27 countries. Well, nobody compares Estonia to Germany or Greece to Latvia or Romania to Spain. Or, I mean, how could you compare Anchorage, Alaska to New York City? That would be like comparing, San Diego to Miami. The United States is 5% of the world's population spread out over 3.5 million square miles. It's a monstrous country. And I can tell you that there's obviously always jobs in the rural because young millennials, and I get it, they come out, they're single, they don't want to buy a practice because maybe they're going to meet some girl at some seminar and she lives in a different, so I understand when you're young, it's so important to find a new mate and make a new nest and lay some eggs and all that kind of stuff. So you're not going to have as many chances to find the perfect mate in a town of 4,000. But you know what? We're this far away from driverless cars. So, your hour commute to that small town is really going to be an hour just sleeping in the backseat of a automatic Tesla, just driving you to work and dinging when you get there. I bet within 5 years, a lot of these cars will just be a box, and you can go get in your box, and you're at home, you're on a desk, you're on your computer while this box is driving you home automatically. But I would demographics matter is what I'm trying to say. Like if you were going to move from America to Europe, I mean, would you pick Germany or Greece? I mean, economically, I'd pick Germany. Do you think you'd have more opportunity in Slovakia or Slovenia? I mean, that demographics really, really matter. So I think it's imperative to not box the whole United States of America into one thing. If you go to Dental Town, it's all free, not trying to sell you anything, but if you go to the classifieds, right now on the classifieds, there are 1,242 jobs available, and there are 2,200 practices for sale. So that's what we're seeing in Canada and the United States. So for every dentist that says, hey, I need an associate, 2 dentists are selling their practice. And I just talked earlier today with one of the biggest practice brokers in Canada, Timothy Brown of ROI. But he says, yeah, a lot of these older dentists that didn't get divorced and had their 401k, they're just like, I'm done. So right now we see 2 dentists selling their practice for every one that's hiring. And then you combine that with the fact that there are a lot of smart dentists. I mean, they've all had, they trained in math, applied math as physics, applied physics as chemistry, applied chemistry as biology. So they graduated with all the tools necessary to analyze future scientific issues. And a lot of them have analyzed this COVID-19 and the threat and the risk. And I'd say about 15% of the workforce has pulled off from there. Now, that's muddied water with such high unemployment benefits. So, I know dental assistants that say, if I go back to work full time, I'm only going to make like $400 extra a month. Why wouldn't I just want to stay home and have fun with my kids and be the perfect mom for so little difference? So for a lot of reasons, there's been a contraction in the dentist suppliers, old guys selling their office. You've had a lot of workers, 10 to 15%, that's saying with welfare and unemployment, I don't even want to go back. But then you have the other problem that all this stimulus ends in July. This is right now, June 24th. And we're at 120,000 have died in America. That's from corona. That's more than all the casualties of World War I. And they say we're going to come back, and it's going to come back with a vengeance in the fall. Now, nobody knows that. It's just like I know the market is massively overvalued compared to the Buffett index. Now, being in the market for 32 years, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, well, it's always different this time. It's always different." I heard about how different it was from 94 to 2000, and then the Nasdaq was at 5,800 and fell to 1,600. I've seen all this. I don't think there's anything new, because you can go from the internet to the telephone. I mean, from the telegraph to the telephone to the internet, but it's still the same human being with two opposing thumbs playing with their little communication device. The human isn't changing. The human evolves so slowly that this rapid change in technology always makes you think everything's different this time, but at the end of the day, it's still a Homo sapien. They're always the same. And I would make cash king. I would try to go get a job. By the way, when I got out of school on May 11, it took me till September 21st to get my practice open. So it took me 4 months. And I met a dentist named Ed Silker, who I'm still grateful for this first day. He had 4 Sunshine Dental Clinics. They were open 7 to 7, 7 days a week. And I got to work 7 to 1 at a Sunshine in downtown Phoenix 7 days a week. And then at 1 to 7 p.m. at the Sunshine in Glendale 7 days a week. So I got to work 7 to 7, 7 days a week, while they spent 4 months building out my office. And I was doing my dental school's 4-year requirements. I think we had to do 50 amalgams, 15 canals of endo, 15 units of dentures, all that stuff. I was doing my entire dental school requirements like every week. I mean, it was just crazy. And there were 6 dentists in there. One of my friends, Nick Gidwani, we used to always joke that I would pull out the top half of the tooth, and then he would come in and pull out the bottom half of the tooth. But, by the time I got out of that 4 months at Sunshine Dental, I think Nick had helped me pull out, like 20 or 30 different root systems, and I had like doubled, tripled my training. So I would get in the real world, and then here's the problem that if your mom and dad are a dentist, here's their problem in a nutshell. So this is going to be your problem in a nutshell, and that is, it's never what you make, it's what you spend. For instance, we've had 2 dental schools in my backyard for 10 years. And so many of these kids will get out and they'll have $400,000 student loans, and I'll say, well, hey, your dad is a dentist. You know what you need to do? You need to go work with your dad, and you got a job at this place, but you need to get another job, get 2 jobs, work full-time, live with your old man, rent-free, grocery-free, and get out of debt. And then a year later, what do you hear? Oh, I met Maria. She's so perfect. And we just bought a $500,000 house out in Queen Creek. I'm like, oh, dude, you were all freaked out about $400,000 of student loans, which was an investment in you that could take you from a $10 hourly worker at McDonald's to a $100 an hour doctor of dental surgery. And that was a $400,000 really good investment. And now you just bought a $500,000 house consumption, and then she's married, and then she's not going to get a job because she married the rich dentist, and she's going to pop out 3 or 4 kids, and then she has to have a separate car. He takes a car to work, but she has to have her own car and her own this and her own that, and dentists, when I analyze a 40-year-old dentist, I'll go through every personal spending category. So like your house. Is it the normal average house, or do you have more house than average? More house. Okay, vacation. Do you just go to the lake and go camping and fishing? No, they flew to Hawaii. They've been on a cruise. They eat out. Dentists eat out 19 and 31 meals. And now during this pandemic, I can't believe how many of my friends have told me, man, I can't believe how much money I'm saving because I just go home and eat dinner instead of going to the club, and each drink is $15. So the skill that will last you a lifetime is just quit spending so much stupid money. Furthermore, you don't want to marry the person that's only going to marry you because you have a nice car and a nice house and a nice all this kind of stuff. You ought to try marrying someone that has a job. And looking back, the best decision you could ever make in dental school is only one. The only best decision you could make in dental school is always marrying someone else in the class. Now you have, marriage, it's communication. Well, now you're both dentists. You both know dentistry. You have so much to talk about. Then you add marriage and a kid and parents and vacations. I mean, so you go from one person making $10,000 a month, transferring it to a third of it to the government and another third to someone who spends all that money, when you could have actually married an income producer. So when a dentist marries another dentist, they have so much more money, so much more flexibility, so many more things to talk about. So, I mean, it just makes such a higher quality. But what I know from women versus men in all cultures of all times is women always marry up the socioeconomic ladder, which means there's only two people here, so men always marry down. So men will pass up a doctor of dental surgery to some woman who looks perfect in a pair of blue jeans, and that'll last about an hour and a half, and they fall for that optical illusion all the time, and it comes back to bite them so bad. And then if that's not bad enough, sometimes they get optically eluded, but with their dental assistant or hygienist, and it's just a multi-million-dollar mistake to pass up someone who could earn $10,000 a month for 40 years to someone who can destroy $10,000 a month for 40 years. So marry smart. Quit spending money. Learn how to cook. Why can't you just go to the Red Box and rent a DVD for $1 and go to that? Why? How come every time you leave the house, you've always got to spend more money? They're diamond rings. They don't have the little bitty diamond. It's always a big old 3-carat. It's always a Range Rover. It's always a Benz. They have 100,000 different ways to spend too much money. So what I would do is I would quit spending money in dental graduate schools. I would stop spending money by getting a residency for $10,000 a year when I could have got a job for a DSO and made $100,000 a year. A lot of these DSOs are guaranteed on Dental Town. I would say half the help wanted ads for dentists are guaranteeing between $70,000 and $100,000 a year minimum. Now, by the way, I started with blood and guts, oral surgeons. They're guaranteed $300,000. And endodontists used to be guaranteed the same as oral surgeons until the microscope came out. Because you go back 20 years ago, an endodontist that gets out, he would come out and do 8 to 9 molars a day. And then they got a microscope, which slowed everything down, and now they're down to 4 or 5 molars a day. So I've seen their start salary drop from $300 to $200 just because now they got a microscope, they became a neurosurgeon, they're reattaching the inferior alveolar nerve to I'm not sure what. But get a job, get a real world job, start making money and quit spending money.
So I guess you're right that, okay, there are jobs, as you mentioned, and people can get job. But I have to ask you one question on this one. You mentioned that you started practice 30 years ago, or when you started right away. But, the experience you had while you were doing dentistry as a student may not be the same right now with COVID-19. So last semester, like 3 months, crucial 3 months of patient practice for the students and residents were lost. We started slow in all the schools in USA, and may last for another 6 months before they get back to the normal flow of patients. So if there's a residency program with 2 years, like half of their residency is gone. So they may not have that much of clinical experience now to get or to start a practice or have enough experience to start a job. I don't know.
Well, so that's a great observation, and it's very true. But, when you look at DSOs, the thing I like about Aspen is Bob Fontana's, all the other ones want to go to the upper middle class areas. And Bob Fontana, who we've had on the show, said, business 101 is you go where they ain't. And he went to all the poor, underserved areas. And if you go get a job, and most dentists come out of school and they start wanting to do Invisalign and cosmetic rehab. Well, that's not a doctor. Imagine if every time we talked about a doctor, it was just someone who did facelifts, tummy tucks, and Botox. I mean, no one in the world thinks of a doctor as someone who does breast implants and Botox. I mean, a doctor is you walk into a hospital, you wrecked your car, you broke your leg, you had a heart attack. I mean, real doctors are treating real people in emergency, and most of those jobs all get skipped over. Like, you could go get a job in a low poor part of town at some dental office that's a Medicaid provider and do what I was saying earlier. I did my 4-year dental school requirements of 50 fillings, 15 endo, 15 units of removable. I was doing that for Dr. Ed Silker, who was had Sunshine Dental. I was doing that every week. And I was doing it on grateful people because we were in the poor parts of town. People weren't taking Medicaid and Medicare, and I was getting all this experience. And then I had older doctors in there like Nick Gidwani and his wife Chitra, who would help me when I got in a bind. And shout out to and then when but I'm going to go back to starting out your own practice, because the best advice I could tell you is, what would baby Howie do if I was just walking out of dental school? I had $87,000 of student loans at that time because I had 5 sisters, and my dad would help my sisters with their college. But I was a boy, and boys were different, and I had to be a self-made man, so I got no help, all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, I got out of school on May 11th, and I did the demographics for Phoenix. I picked the best location. I signed a lease. I got into my dental office with no money down. So I found this 85044, and it was the lowest. It was the least number of dentists per 1,000. That area at that time was 1 dentist per 6,000, whereas 6200 South McClintock in downtown Tempe, they had a dentist for every 500 because they had all these medical dental buildings by the hospitals. And they could build a medical dental building with 28 suites and fill a dentist in every one. The craziest one I've ever seen in my life is in downtown San Francisco. It's 450 Sutter Street, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's this tall skyscraper building, and it's it's 450 Sutter Street, and I mean, it's a 40-story building just packed with dentists. Dentists just don't do demographics. And I ask you, have you ever seen an intersection that had 40 McDonald's and a high-rise building right on the same deal? It's just crazy. But it's common in dentistry. So what I did my demographics. I found the least concentration of dentists per 1,000. At that time, it was like 1 per 6,000. Now it's back to 1 for 2,000. But it was at the edge of Phoenix. It was the growing out edge. It's called Ahwatukee. It's annexed into Phoenix. But at the time, it had just got annexed, and it was growing outwards. And I set up there, and I opened up my office 7 to 7, 7 days a week. And I kept it mean and lean. I had 2 operatories, and I had 1 assistant, Jan, who stayed with me for 30 years. And that people would come in, and I would do the X-rays. I would do the perio charting. I would do the diagnosis, and I would just open. So the schedule was always open. I'd say, okay, well, AJ, you got 2 cavities. You know, you're here, and you haven't been to the dentist in 4 years. So, buddy, let's just get it done, because right now those 2 fillings are $250 each. But you haven't been to the dentist for 4 years, and I'm afraid if you walk out that door and you don't come back for 4 years, it's not going to be $250 fillings. It's going to be 2 $2,500 root canal buildups and crowns, and you're already concerned about paying for filling, so I know you won't be able to afford the root canals and crowns. So now you're looking at 2 extractions. And in the United States, by age 65, 10% of Americans have 0 teeth, and a decade later at 75, 20% of Americans don't have any teeth. So it's all about hustle, and it's all about working, and it's all about, they would come in, I would do it all, and, I would just work. And it was, my gosh, 7 to 7. I gave up Sundays first for the obvious reasons. I mean, you need a day of rest. And then I slowed down Saturday. Now, if you look at me now, it's kind of bad to compare me to back then, because now I'm old, rich, and fat. I'm not going to work 7 to 7, 7 days a week. I mean, my gosh, that's what the young and the hungry do. But that's what the kids do. So if I was coming out of school right now, how did I get a dental office, no money down? I walked in there. It was the best demographics. They had a Safeway, which is a Safeway grocery store next to a Walgreens. They had a Pizza Hut, a Chase Bank. And the guy told me that he wanted $10 a square foot a year on a 3-year lease, and it was 1,000 square feet. And I said, okay, well, I'll pay you $20 a square foot instead of 10, and I'll sign a 5-year lease instead of 3. He said, okay, what am I supposed to do with all that extra money? And I said, well, you built this 16-acre Safeway, Walgreens, Pizza Hut, Chase Bank. I'm a dentist. I don't know how to build out a suite. I'll get you the blueprints and you do my build out. He said, good enough. And then I went over to the dental supply company, which at the time was Healthco. I think it got swallowed up into either Patterson or Shine. I'm not for sure which one. And I picked out everything I wanted. And I plumbed it for 4 ops, but wanted to start with 2 just for logistics. And everything came to, I'll remember, it was the same number as my student loans. I think my student loans were $87,000, and this was like $1,000 less or more. It's about $87,000. And I said, well, hey, the bad news is I don't have a dime. So what I want you to do is give me all that equipment and put me on a 5-year loan. And when I pay off the 60th payment, it's all mine. So you're either going to get that deal or no deal. And Healthco said, well, we want the deal. So the landlord built out my office. Healthco equipped everything, and they gave me the keys to my office, and I was working 7 to 7, 7 days a week for Ed Silker at Sunshine, and I slowly just faded away. I dropped the early morning and then switched to my office from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. 7 days a week, and just made the transition. And then when I had employees and I had a downtime, if we had downtime, my staff always found something to do because they didn't. I had a stack of flyers this deep that said, bring this into Today's Dental in Phoenix, Arizona, and get a cleaning exam and x-rays, all for whatever the price was back then, $99 or $49, whatever it was. And when we had downtime or cancellation, I said, well, if you're not busy, take a stack of these flyers, go out in that parking lot, put one under each windshield car deal in the parking lot, and then sometimes on Sundays when I would get up and go for a walk, I'd take a stack of those and do high density stuff like an apartment complex where you could walk through an apartment complex for 1 hour and drop a flyer on several hundred different cars. And I just always had this flow of new patients coming in from that type of marketing. Plus I went next door to Safeway. It's all about hustling. I went next door to Safeway and I said, well, who's the manager? And this guy named Dan introduced himself, and I said, hey, do you get dental insurance here? He said, no. I said, you got wife and kids? Yeah. I said, I'll tell you what, I will fix up you, your wife, your kids. I'll do everything if you put a stack of these flyers at each one of the checkout lanes, and when you're bagging the groceries, 1 flyer per bag. And it was such genius marketing. One day the dentist across the street called me up, and I just loved this guy to death. And his name was Mark. And he said to me, he says, Howard, I'm just curious. I came home from work. It was Mark Woodland. And he said, your flyer is on my desk, my kitchen table, no big deal. But what I don't understand is no one knows how it got here. It wasn't in the mail. My wife doesn't know where it came from. How the hell did you get a flyer for your dental office on my kitchen table? So I told him what I did with Safeway, and he goes, man, Howard, that's just genius. I mean, he used to give me all these kudos for marketing. And then another thing I did when I went to LVI and Dickerson taught me all this cosmetic dentistry stuff, I went around to every single beauty shop, and I said, okay, you have a nail salon, a hair salon, or whatever. Have you ever wanted bleaching, bonding, veneers, all that? I said, I'll do you for free if you put a picture up of your before and after and said dentistry done by Howard Fran in the same parking lot, Today's Dental, whatever. And I did every one of those. And then my family was very Catholic. My 2 oldest sisters went straight from high school to the nunnery. I've been a dentist 32 years. My oldest sister, Mary Kay, has been a cloistered Carmelite nun for, I think, 40 years or coming up on 40. And so I went around, and someone's always did all their dentistry for free. So I went to the 18 churches in 85044 Ahwatukee, and I just went to every one, and I said, hey, someone's doing my sister for free, so I'll do you for free. And out of the 18, I think about 8 of them took me up on that. And my gosh, the Lutherans are the best because, the Catholics aren't married. They don't have families, but the Lutherans are always married with kids. And they're every one of them said, well, I'm always up here giving a sermon and I'm conscious about my smile, and they wanted veneers. So like my first 4 or 10 veneer cases were only on Lutheran pastors and ladies who owned hair salons. And you always think as a kid, you think, well, you know who would pay the most money for cosmetic surgery? It'd be some young Instagram influencer girl. No, dude, she's already hot because she's young. I mean, when you look at the research, anybody 13 years younger than you is like perfectly beautiful. Like, I see it all the time in the retirement communities. Like, a 90-year-old man will tell you about the hottie he's dating, and he'll show you a picture of an 85-year-old woman, and you're looking at this side like I know you're 100 and she's 85, but they don't have any money, and they're already beautiful because they're young. If you're young, you're beautiful. If you don't think you're beautiful, you have something going wrong between your ears, and fix that. It's not the deal, but it's the old people that have all the money. It's the old people that paid off their house, their kids are gone. And when I started doing veneers on old Lutheran ministers, oh my gosh, they would, I did more veneer cases of 60, 70, 80-year-old women. The first guy I did was Pastor Don, who passed away about a year ago, just a legend out here in Ahwatukee. And I was getting a 65, 75-year-old woman say, did you do Pastor Don's teeth? Oh my God, they're beautiful. Can you do that for me? But again, it's about hustling. It's about, I went to the pastor and offered free. I went to, and February's Dental Health Month. I did every single elementary school every February. So it's about hustling. But if you could, but think about this. You go get a job for a DSO, and let's say they offer you a $500 guarantee for a day. Well, when you own your own dental office, one root canal buildup and crown's $2,500. How I can't figure out why you think a middleman makes you more money, and it's actually gotten worse. Like, when I graduated from school, a lot of us had our own office or a whole gig open within 4 to 6 months. And now they just say, I think I'm just going to get a job. And I say, well, if that's a good idea, then I should be able to go back to the University of Connecticut graduating class of 2015 and survey 100 kids, and they all still work for the DSO, and they're all living happily ever after. And that's never, ever, ever what I find. What I always find is they have a different job every year for 5 years until they're finally so miserable and they hate everything so bad they open up their own practice. And what I would do, I would go out and get into a dental office, no money down, have the landlord do the build out, have Patterson, Benco, Burkhart fill it up on a 60-month lease, and then I would be available, and I would sit out there, and what used to be the high value cosmetic dentistry, the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, which was the trump card for attracting people to pay more money for greater services, has now been trumped by the American Academy of Disease Control Dentistry. And I have several friends that have been out here for a long time where people are saying, you know, I got a toothache and I don't want to catch COVID, because these are older people. Remember, the older people have all the money. They get all the veneers. I remember spending a week with Larry Rosenthal in New York City, who was the most famous cosmetic dentist. And I thought I was going to see all these super model runway girls getting veneers done. Are you kidding me? It was all 70, 80-year-old people. Those are the only people that have $50,000 to spend on upper 6 to 10 veneers. I mean, he was putting veneers on ladies who had at least one liver spot bigger than the veneer somewhere on her head for this. They have all the money, and those are the people that are scared to go to the dentist, because this COVID is wiping out nursing homes, it's wiping out meatpacking plants, prisons, military ships where everybody's living on a ship, high density stuff. And there's a lot of older people with money who say, yeah, I'll come in. And what they're doing is they're saying, if you pay for the entire treatment plan up front to schedule this 2-3 hour appointment where it'll just be me, you, and the dental assistant. And they pay for the whole treatment up front, and they come in and they get their cleaning, their root canal, their crown, maybe they got a CERAC machine. But I'm seeing a lot of that. So the summary is that young people have no money and are borrowing other people's money, and the old people, they don't have debt. You're actually, when you borrow money, you're borrowing their money that's in the savings account loaned to you. They have all the money. So if you opened up a dental office straight out of school and it was 500 square feet, 2 operatories, and all you advertise was disease control, you have the lights, the filters, the fans, you're dressed up like you're ready to do a moonwalk, and you just focus on older, rich people who are afraid to go to a cattle clinic. And again, that's 2 Americas. Half of America doesn't even care about this virus. They don't believe in it. Why? They're young, they're healthy, they don't care. But there's a ton of money right now in elderly people who are afraid to go into the dentistry. In fact, it's time geriatric dentistry ought to be approved as a specialty just for COVID.
Could be. I'm sure. So I guess what I get it from your thing is, and your experiences, that what is going to help new dentists is hard work, hustle, spend money very wisely, and have a plan. So we have just, we are almost close to the hour. In quick, can you help them or advise them to set realistic goals and plan for, say, next 5 years? We can spend 2 minutes on that, and then we'll be ready to close.
2 minutes? I can't even say my name in 2 minutes.
I know you can. You can spend 1 day on that one.
I knew I would be a lecturer when my mother told me when I was 10 days old. When I was 10 years old, she says, "Howard, if I taped your mouth shut, you'd fart to death." But what I would do is, remember, go back in your history books. When we got out of school, I don't like the way they sell practices right now, because I'm going to sell a practice to you. Well, in the old day, I'd want to know who AJ is, because I'm selling all my patient relationships. So I'd want to know that you're a good guy. Now you just sell it, and some bank, does all the money. But you can walk, if you're a hustler, you could go back to your small town and contact all the dentists and say, "Hey, I don't have money to buy a practice. I don't have this or that, but I want to do an owner carry. I'm young, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to work. If you will be my mentor and you'll sell me your practice and you carry the paper, let's do a 10% interest, 7 years. Nobody will pass that up." But what's cool about it is then when you have an upset patient, you could call the owner and say, "Hey, AJ, do you remember that lady you worked on for 30 years, Margaret? She wants to shoot me. She's all upset." And AJ's like, "Hey, don't worry. I'm going to come down to the office. Let me talk to her." So you had a guy that was incentivized to mentor you. When I sell my practice through some bank, Skank of America or whatever, and they do the practice, you have no money in the game. You have no skin in the game. And that's what happens with free enterprise. When you go to a seminar, you can see which doctors are associates because they're sitting there on their iPhone on Facebook and Snapchat the whole time. But you see who has incentives. You see who's in debt. They're in the front row taking vicious notes. Well, when you have an owner carry, that guy is really going to not sell this to you unless he really thinks you have what it takes. He's going to carry it for. I think the old time, I'm one of those old guys like Oscar the Grouch that just thinks everything was better. Like music. Have you heard one good song come out after 2000? No. They all came out in the 70s. And a few came out in the 80s by accident, but nothing's come out since 2000. So I would go back to those old days. I'd find an owner carry. If you can't find a selling dentist owner carry, and how do you not find an owner carry when I told you earlier that just on Dental Town there are 2,203 practices for sale with 1,242 jobs available, which means there's 2 dentists trying to run from dentistry for every one that's saying, "No, we're still in the game, we're still expanding, we're still hiring." So you got 2,203 practices for sale. You could go on Dental Town and pitch all 2,300 of them. You could just sit there, copy and paste, and hit every one of them, and you're going to find an owner carry, especially in rural, because DSOs can't go to rural because their biggest problem, some of these DSOs on any given day, 10% of their offices don't even have a dentist in the box. So they're paying $5,000 finding fees to any recruiter that can get a doc in a box, okay? Well, they know that doc is going to be single. He's not going to go to Parsons, Kansas to try to find a mate if he could have gone to Kansas City or Dallas. So all those rural practices, I can name 7 rural practices right now where dentists are just walking away from it. So then
this kid's telling me, well, I'm from Connecticut. I'm $400,000 in debt. Let me get out the world's smallest violin and try to get you to cry for my plight. I'm like, okay, well, I got an owner carried dental office where the guy's doing $750, taking home $200. Why don't you go there? Oh, well, I'm not leaving Connecticut. I mean, let's not be crazy. Oh, so okay, so you're in a really desperate situation as long as you live right where you want to live. And then what's craziest is their parents. I'll say, well, where was your mom born? And she's like, Pakistan. And I'm like, okay, so your mom traveled 13,000 miles to give you a better opportunity, and you can't move 70 miles away from the big town? Really? Your mom went 13,000 miles and you can't go 100? Tell me you're not entitled. If you're a doctor of dental surgery in the richest country in the world and you can't figure out how to make $200,000 a year this year walking out of dental school, you didn't try and you didn't hustle, and if you want to get sympathy, don't call me.
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you so much. We are almost an hour, and I have to say, this was the fastest hour of my life. It was so interesting. I can keep hearing you. I'm going to stay connected with Dr. Farhan on his podcast. The listeners who have not heard his podcast should hear once. I will add a disclaimer. It is addictive. You will get hooked to it. So, last words to the new dentist before I close. You chose dentistry. You got to love your profession. Once you start loving what you do, you will fall in love with your life again. And I want to thank everyone, all the attendees here, and Dr. Farhan. You are the best.
Thanks, AJ.
Wait, you need to stop calling yourself old. If I'm in person, I will put a hand on your mouth and stop that. It is not good. You are young, younger than all the young people I know. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being here and guiding our new dentists.
That was an honor and a privilege, AJ. Thank you so much for having me speak to your group. It was a true honor, and I can't wait to see you again.